You are here with me in the quiet darks. A long, long time ago, the year is something like 200 BCE, and the Roman Republic is flexing its muscles, getting ready to be well Rome. The air is warm, the sounds of the city are fading into a gentle hum and a scent. A powerful, pungent, almost defiant scent drifts on the evening breeze. It's a scent so common to us now, so mundane that you'd barely register it. But for a young Roman on the cusp of an empire, it was the smell of life itself. The smell of garlic. We're not talking about the perfectly manicured, individually wrapped heads you get at the grocery store today. Not even close. You are walking through the Subura, the pulsing, messy, and very fragrant heart of Rome. Every corner, every alley, every open doorway seems to promise a new smell. But this one, this garlic, is different. It's wilder, a bit more aggressive. It's the kind of garlic that makes a statement before you even see it. It didn't just appear here one day. Its journey to Rome was a long one, a story etched in the dirt and the blood of 1,000 forgotten trade routes. Garlic, or Allium sativum, as the botanist would later call it, didn't start its journey anywhere near the hills of Italy. Its true ancient home is believed to be in Central Asia, somewhere in the vast, dusty steppes of what we now call Kazakhstan or Uzbekistan. Imagine a time before maps, before established kingdoms, when nomadic tribes roamed and foraged. This tiny, unassuming bulb, packed with its powerful chemicals, was a lifesaver. It was a food source that kept for ages without refrigeration, a medicine to ward off sickness, and a fierce flavor to make bland food bearable. It was, in essence, a pre-packaged survival kit from nature herself. From these wild origins, it slowly, steadily began its migration. It moved with people, with armies, and with merchants. It traveled south into the lands of Mesopotamia, where the ancient Sumerians and Babylonians discovered its uses. It was here, in the cradle of civilization, that garlic truly began its cultural journey. We know from ancient cuneiform tablets that the Sumerians were using garlic for both food and medicine. They likely saw it as a gift from the earth, a fiery little bulb that held some of its most powerful secrets. The ancient Egyptians were even more obsessed. You can almost feel the dry desert air and hear the rhythmic chants as you picture thousands of pyramid builders getting their daily ration of garlic. It was a staple of their diet, believed to provide strength and endurance for their monumental work. A historical fact, you can almost taste the tomb of the pharaoh Tutankhamun contained bulbs of garlic placed there for his journey to the afterlife. It was seen as a vital part of the Egyptians' spiritual and physical diet, and so the journey continued. From Egypt, the garlic moved west across the sparkling blue waters of the Mediterranean. The Greeks, with their love of philosophy and drama, also fell for the pungent bulb. They loved it so much that a quirky tidbit of history tells us it was used by Greek athletes before the Olympic Games, believing it would give them a performance-enhancing boost. Think of it the original sports supplement. And here's where the scholarly debate comes in. Did they actually believe it worked? Or was it just a traditional ritual, a symbolic gesture of strength? Historians still argue whether the athlete's faith in garlic was rooted in perceived physical benefits or simply a cultural superstition. But it was the Romans who truly took the garlic ball and ran with it. They were the ultimate appropriators, the great synthesizers of the ancient world. They didn't invent much from scratch, but they perfected everything. And when they found garlic, this sturdy, resilient plant that had survived the steppes and the deserts, they saw its potential. They saw its power, and so they brought it home. Not just as a novelty, but as a core pillar of their burgeoning agricultural and cultural identity. You can picture the scene: a Roman legionnaire marching across a dusty plain, his sack heavy with rations. Amongst the hardtack and dried meat, there, it is a tightly braided rope of garlic bulbs, swinging against his side. It was a simple yet potent tool of empire. It provided flavor, yes, but more importantly, it provided a sense of continuity. It was the same garlic that their fathers and grandfathers had eaten. It was a taste of home, a taste of Rome, no matter how far they marched. The plant itself was a testament to Roman pragmatism. It was hardy, it grew in a variety of climates, and it stored for months, even years, without spoiling. It was a perfect fit for a society built on logistics, on feeding a massive army and a sprawling city. The Roman agronomists, the forerunners of modern agricultural scientists, didn't just plant it, they studied it. They figured out which soils it liked best, which seasons were most productive, and how to maximize its yield. The wild garlic of Central Asia was becoming the civilized, cultivated garlic of Rome. It was the first step on a journey that would see garlic become one of the empire's most important and ultimately most forgotten staples. The seeds, or rather the bulbs, of this incredible story are just beginning to be planted. Sleepy not yet. There's a whole pungent empire to explore. The sun rises over the Roman Forum, painting the marble and travertine in soft gold. But we're not heading there. Not today. Instead, you are walking with a purpose, a Roman of the early Republic, and you're headed to the temple. Not the grand temple of Jupiter, mind you, but a smaller, older, and in some ways more powerful one. The air still holds the lingering scent from last night, but here in the cool, shaded courtyard of the Temple of Mars, the god of war, the smell of garlic is almost religious. It's a sacred, pungent plant, you see. A gift from the earth itself, one that held a peculiar and powerful place in Roman belief. You watch as a priest, his face stern and his hands methodical, places a small garland of garlic bulbs at the foot of an ancient statue. This wasn't just a decoration. This was an offering, a tangible plea to the gods for strength, protection, and victory. The Romans, for all their pragmatism and engineering genius, were a profoundly superstitious people. They believed that the natural world was filled with signs, omens, and substances that could influence the spiritual realm, and garlic, with its fierce taste and potent aroma, was seen as one of the most powerful of these substances. It was a shield, a ward against malevolent forces. Remember that long, winding journey garlic took from the steppes to the city? Well, along the way, it picked up some serious spiritual baggage. The Egyptians believed it could ward off evil spirits, and the Greeks, ever the pragmatists, simply used it to ward off the smell of other people's bad breath. But for the Romans, its spiritual significance was deeply intertwined with their everyday lives. A quirky tidbit: Roman soldiers would often wear a clove of garlic around their necks like a lucky charm. They believed it gave them courage and protected them from harm in battle. It was their version of a four-leaf clover, but a whole lot more smelly. You can almost feel the collective, pungent confidence of a legion marching into battle, each man carrying his own tiny, personal shield of garlic. The priest at the temple isn't just offering the garlic for strength in battle, though. He's also offering it for health. The Romans had a remarkably advanced, if slightly bizarre, understanding of medicine. They understood that certain plants had specific properties, and garlic was at the top of the list. It was a cure, all a panacea for almost every ailment you could imagine. Got a nasty cough? Garlic. Feeling a little sluggish? Garlic. Worried about that mysterious fever? More garlic. It was their version of chicken noodle soup, but with a lot more bite. The great Roman writer and natural historian Pliny the Elder, a man who documented just about everything, praised garlic's medicinal properties extensively. He wrote about its use for everything from intestinal worms to snake bites. He even suggested that it could be used to treat leprosy and epilepsy. A mainstream historical fact, Pliny the Elder's writings on garlic were a primary source for medical knowledge for centuries after his death. His work, Naturalis Historia, became a kind of ancient medical textbook, and his belief in garlic's power cemented its place as a staple of Roman medicine. But here's where the philosophical and scholarly debates begin to crop up. The Romans were, after all, a society with a wide range of beliefs and practices. Historians still argue whether the widespread use of garlic as medicine was based on genuine empirical observation. Did they notice that people who ate garlic seemed to get sick less often, or if it was just a continuation of older inherited superstitions? Was it a truly effective preventative, or was it a pungent placebo? Perhaps it was a little bit of both. You can picture a Roman physician, a man who had studied in Alexandria, looking at a patient with a fever. He knows that cleanliness and good food are important, but he also knows that his patient expects a cure. So he prescribes a dose of garlic, a medicine that everyone believes in and hopes for the best. It's a fascinating look into the human mind, the way we blend science and faith in a way that feels comfortable and right to us. The role of garlic in Roman belief wasn't just about warding off evil and curing diseases. It was also deeply connected to the concept of virility and strength. It was seen as a food that made a man well a man. This wasn't just about physical strength. It was also about spiritual strength, the kind of inner fortitude that a Roman citizen was expected to have. It was a food for soldiers, for gladiators, for the strong and the brave. It wasn't, as some later cultures would come to see it, a food for peasants. Not yet. It was a food for the powerful. And in a society where status and strength were so important, this gave garlic a special kind of prestige. You can almost smell the incense and the garlic mingling in the air, a strange but fitting combination of the sacred and the profane. The Romans believed that the gods themselves had their favorite foods, their favorite offerings. And for the gods of war and health, it seems the humble, fiery bulb was a perfect choice. It was a reminder that even in the most sophisticated of empires, the most powerful truths could be found in the simplest of things. A single bulb of garlic, with its many cloves, was a microcosm of Roman life itself. It was food, it was medicine, it was a spiritual offering, and it was a symbol of strength. It was everything. And this is just the beginning of its story. So close your eyes and imagine a world where a single bulb of garlic could hold so much power. The sun is higher now, its warmth baking the cobblestones of the Campus Martius, the field of Mars. But the air here isn't just warm. It's thick with the smells of sweat dust and something else, something sharp and invigorating. You are standing on the sidelines, a humble citizen, among a murmuring crowd watching the gladiators. They are massive men, their muscles like coiled ropes, their bodies a testament to a life of brutal training. And as they prepare for the day's spectacle, you notice something. Not just the leather strapping and the heavy bronze helmets, but the pungent aroma that surrounds them, a smell so familiar to you by now that it's like a second skin. It's the smell of garlic. It wasn't a choice, it was a mandate. Gladiators, those human spectacles of combat and endurance, lived on a diet that would make a modern bodybuilder weep. They were, in essence, the original protein and carb-loading athletes. Their diet was known as hordeari, which literally means barley eaters. But it wasn't just barley. It was a dense, almost punishing diet designed for strength and rapid recovery from injury. And at the heart of this diet, a central pillar of their existence was garlic. Think of it this way: their life was a brutal cycle of training, fighting, and healing. They needed a food that was more than just sustenance. They needed a food that was a tool. And garlic was a very effective tool. It was believed to impart strength and endurance, a kind of primal energy that came from the earth itself. Gladiators would consume significant quantities of garlic before a bout. It was a ritual, a last-minute psychological and physical boost before they entered the arena. A mainstream historical fact, the gladiators' diet, a mix of barley beans and vegetables, was specifically designed to promote a layer of subcutaneous fat, which they believed would protect vital organs from shallow cuts. Garlic was a crucial part of this diet, a flavor and a supposed source of power woven into every meal. But the use of garlic wasn't just about the physical. It was deeply spiritual. A quirky tidbit: some gladiatorial schools would have their trainees perform rituals with garlic, burning it as an incense to the gods of combat, believing its powerful aroma would carry their prayers more effectively. It was a way of saying, we are ready, we are strong, and we have called upon the most potent forces of the earth to aid us. You can almost imagine the scene: the gladiators in a hushed training room, the air thick with the smoke of burning garlic, their faces grim, their bodies tense. It was a moment of focus, a chance to connect with the raw, brutal power of their chosen profession. And of course, there was the practical side. Gladiators lived in close quarters, often in cramped, unsanitary conditions. Illness and infection were a constant threat. Garlic, with its known antimicrobial properties, was a natural preventative. It was a kind of internal medicine, a way of fighting off the unseen enemies of disease. This is where the scholarly debate comes, and historians still argue whether the gladiators' use of garlic was primarily a form of ritual or a practical, if unscientific, approach to public health. Was it a sacred tradition passed down from older cultures, or was it a form of ancient folk medicine that actually, kind of worked? We'll never know for sure. But it's a fascinating glimpse into the mind of a culture that blended the spiritual and the practical so seamlessly. The gladiators' relationship with garlic wasn't unique, but it was perhaps the most public and powerful example of its use. It cemented garlic's reputation as a food of the strong, the brave, and the powerful. It was a taste of victory, a smell of battle. It was a part of their identity. When a gladiator walked into the arena, you smelled him before you saw him, and that smell was a sign of his power. It was a warning to his opponent. I have eaten the food of gods and warriors. I am strong. I am ready. This connection to strength and masculinity extended beyond the arena. Roman generals would often ensure their troops had a steady supply of garlic, not just for its supposed medicinal properties, but for the psychological boost it provided. It was a food that was believed to make a man more aggressive, more fearless. It was the original man food, a culinary embodiment of the Roman ideal of virtus, courage, valor, and excellence. So as you stand there watching the gladiators, you are not just seeing a sport. You are seeing a culture in action. A culture that believed in the power of the natural world, that saw a humble bulb of garlic as a source of strength, a shield against evil, and a ritualistic tool to prepare for life and death. The scent of garlic isn't just a smell, it's a story of gladiators, of warriors, of an empire built on a foundation of raw, unyielding power. It's a story that starts with a single clove and a belief that you are what you eat. And tonight, as you go to sleep, you can almost smell the pungent power of 1,000 forgotten gladiators and the garlic that fueled them. The gladiators are gone, their bloody work done for the day. The crowds have dispersed, and the quiet rhythm of Roman life begins to reassert itself. You trudge back from the campus martius into the city, your stomach rumbling. The sun is beginning to dip, and the air once filled with dust and excitement is now heavy with the promise of dinner. This is where garlic truly came into its own, not just as a tool for soldiers and athletes, but as the secret weapon of the Roman kitchen. This is where it transitioned from a symbolic offering to a culinary staple, a flavor that defined an era. Forget everything you think you know about Roman food. It wasn't all lavish feasts and exotic flamingo tongues, though those certainly existed for the very wealthy. For the vast majority of Romans, dinner was a simple affair. It was about filling the belly, about sustenance. And garlic, my friend, was the undisputed king of flavor. It was the salt and pepper of the ancient world, but with a whole lot more personality. Its pungent kick could transform a humble bowl of lentils into a hearty meal or elevate a simple piece of bread into a satisfying snack. You pass an open-air food stall, a thermopolium, and the smell hits you full force. The vendor is serving a thick garlicky porridge, a kind of ancient comfort food. A mainstream historical fact, a core component of the Roman diet was a grain-based porridge called pulse. This was the foundation of many meals, and it was often flavored with whatever was available, herbs, vegetables, and most importantly, garlic. The garlic was a cheap, readily available, and potent source of flavor that made the mundane palatable. You watch as a man buys a bowl, ladles some thick garlic paste on top, and eats it with gusto. It's a moment of simple pleasure, a testament to the power of a single ingredient to make life just a little bit better. The Roman Cookbook, Apicius. A collection of ancient recipes is filled with garlic, not just as a seasoning, but as a star ingredient. There are recipes for everything from sauces to roasted meats, and more often than not, garlic is right there at the center of the action. It was a flavor they understood, a taste they craved. They knew how to handle it, how to roast it to make it sweet, how to mince it raw for a fiery bite. They were, in essence, garlic connoisseurs. A quirky tidbit that reveals their love affair with garlic: the Romans were famous for their sauces, especially one called maritum. This was a peasant sauce, a simple blend of cheese, herbs, olive oil, and a generous amount of garlic, all pounded together in a mortar and pestle. It was a kind of ancient pesto, a sauce that could be made in minutes and served with bread. It was a staple of the Roman dinner table, a testament to the fact that you didn't need wealth to eat well, you just needed a head of garlic. But here's where the scholarly debate comes in. Historians still argue whether the widespread use of garlic in Roman cooking was a matter of taste or a matter of necessity. Was it a flavor they genuinely loved, or was it a cheap and effective way to mask the taste of food that might be a little past its prime? You can imagine a frugal Roman housewife trying to make the last of her dried fish edible, turning to a generous handful of garlic to save the day. It's a practical, logical solution, but it doesn't diminish the fact that it became a beloved flavor in its own right. The two ideas aren't mutually exclusive. They probably loved the flavor, and it was also incredibly useful. So as you walk home, you are not just a spectator, but a participant. The smell of garlic is everywhere, a constant presence in the Roman world. It's in the air, in the food, in the very identity of the people. It's a flavor that links the soldier and the citizen, the rich and the poor. It's a taste of Rome itself. And as you finally reach your home, a humble apartment in an insula, a Roman apartment building, you can smell the comforting aroma of garlic wafting from your own kitchen. Someone is preparing dinner, a simple meal, but a delicious one. And you know without a doubt that garlic is playing a starring role. The dinner is done. The simple meal of garlic-infused porridge, a warm memory in your belly. The city is quieting down, but your mind is still buzzing. You've seen how garlic became a part of Roman life, but how did it get here? Not just from the steppes, but from the ground itself in the fields and farms that fed a burgeoning empire. You're about to journey out of the city, leaving the hustle of the streets for the calm, ordered chaos of the Roman countryside. The air here smells of damp earth, of tilled soil, and of something green and alive. The Romans weren't just great conquerors. They were brilliant agriculturalists. Their empire was built on a foundation of grain olives and, you guessed it, garlic. They didn't just stumble upon it, they engineered its cultivation. The wild, scraggly garlic that first came to Italy was a hardy plant, but it wasn't enough to feed a city of 1 million people, let alone a standing army of hundreds of thousands. The Romans knew they had to get serious. This is where you find yourself standing in a large field on a Roman latifundium, a sprawling agricultural estate. The ground is rich and black, and the rows of young garlic plants are as straight and orderly as a Roman legion. This wasn't just a happy accident. This was the result of deliberate and detailed planning. Roman agronomists, the OGs of farming science, were obsessed with efficiency and yield. They wrote entire books on the subject. A mainstream historical fact, Roman authors like Columella and Cato the Elder wrote detailed treatises on agriculture, providing specific instructions on everything from crop rotation to soil enrichment. These texts show a sophisticated understanding of farming, and they are filled with advice on how to grow the best possible garlic. For example, they knew that garlic liked a well-drained soil and a lot of sun. They knew that you had to break up the bulbs into individual cloves and plant them just so a few inches apart to give them room to grow. They even had specific seasons for planting, usually in the autumn, and for harvesting, typically in the summer. It was a precise science, a meticulous dance with nature. A quirky tidbit that reveals their attention to detail. Roman farmers believed that the phase of the moon could affect the growth of their crops. They would consult lunar calendars and plant their garlic during specific moon phases, believing it would lead to a more bountiful harvest. Was it true? Probably not, but it was a deep-seated belief that shows how much they wanted to get it right. It was a blend of science observation and a bit of ancient magic. You can picture a farmer in the middle of the night, a single oil lamp illuminating his face, meticulously planting a row of garlic by the light of the moon. Here's a thought for you. Historians still argue whether these Roman agricultural techniques were a product of pure genius or simply the result of a vast trial and error process spanning centuries. Did they have a deep theoretical understanding of botany, or did they simply observe what worked over and over again and pass that knowledge down? The truth is probably somewhere in the middle. They were brilliant observers, and they were also brilliant engineers. They built aqueducts and roads, and they applied that same mindset of systematic efficiency to their farms. The Roman garlic you smelled back in the city was not an accident. It was a carefully cultivated, mass-produced product of a highly efficient agricultural system. And it wasn't just about growing a lot of garlic. It was also about variety. The Romans, being the great gourmands they were, didn't just have one kind of garlic. They had many. There was the common garden variety, of course, but there were also larger, more pungent types and smaller, sweeter ones. They had different names for them, different uses for them, and different places where they grew best. They understood that a good chef or a good doctor needed a range of tools, and garlic was no different. This diversity in their crops was a testament to the sophistication of their farming. So as you stand in this vast field, you are looking at more than just plants. You are looking at a system of land management, of labor, and of detailed agricultural knowledge that was the engine of the Roman Empire. This wasn't just farming, it was industrial-scale food production. The garlic here would be harvested dried and then shipped to every corner of the empire. It would feed the soldiers on the frontiers, the senators in their villas, and the common people in the city. It was a silent, unsung hero of the Roman world, a pungent foundation upon which an entire civilization was built. The fields of garlic fade behind you, the sun now high in the sky. You are no longer on a quiet farm, but on a bustling road, one of the many arteries of the Roman Empire. This is the Appian Way, a masterpiece of engineering that stretches from Rome to the south, and it is a marvel of efficiency. But it is not just soldiers and senators who travel these roads. It is goods, goods that fuel an empire. And today you are following one of the most pungent, most powerful of those goods, Roman garlic. The journey of a single head of garlic, from the soil to the dinner plate, was a complex, fascinating process. It involved farmers, merchants, sailors, and a whole lot of organization. The Romans were masters of logistics, and they built an infrastructure to move things at a scale the world had never seen before. You watch as a large wooden cart, creaking under the weight of its cargo, trundles past you. It's filled with hundreds, maybe thousands of braided ropes of dried garlic. It's heading for the port, where it will be loaded onto a ship and sent to the far-flung corners of the empire. This wasn't just a local trade, this was a global enterprise. The Roman Empire was a vast network of cities and provinces, all connected by roads and sea lanes. And garlic was a key part of that network. It was a commodity, a valuable one, that was traded and consumed from Britannia in the north to Egypt in the south. A mainstream historical fact, Roman trade routes extended across the Mediterranean and beyond, with archaeological evidence of Roman goods being found as far away as India and China. Garlic was a part of this massive web of commerce, a small but important piece of the economic puzzle. The journey of the garlic was a testament to its resilience. It was a food that traveled well. Unlike fresh produce, which would spoil in a matter of days, dried garlic could last for months, even years. This made it a perfect export. It was a taste of home that could be shipped to the Roman legions stationed on the frontiers, a reminder of the motherland in a distant foreign land. It was also a valuable trade item, a good that could be exchanged for other commodities like spices from the east or furs from the north. A quirky tidbit that shows the human side of this trade: sailors on Roman ships would often carry their own personal stash of garlic. It wasn't just for food. They believed it would protect them from the dangers of the sea. They saw it as a kind of magical amulet, a small piece of land-based power that could ward off storms and sea monsters. You can almost feel the salty spray on your face as you picture a Roman sailor, his face weathered and his hands calloused, biting into a clove of garlic for courage before a storm. And here's where the scholarly debate comes in. Historians still argue whether the Roman garlic trade was a matter of pure economic necessity or a matter of cultural diffusion. Did they trade garlic because it was a valuable commodity, or did they trade it because they wanted to spread their culture, their food, their way of life to the people they had conquered? It's a chicken and egg question, really. The two are so intertwined that it's hard to separate them. They probably saw it as both. They saw it as a way to make money, yes, but also as a way to make the world a little more Roman. You follow the cart to the port of Ostia, the bustling harbor of Rome. The air here is a cacophony of sounds and smells. The shouts of merchants, the creak of ships' ropes, the salty tang of the sea, and yes, the ever-present pungent aroma of garlic. You watch as the braided ropes of garlic are loaded onto a waiting ship, its sails furled, its hold ready for its precious cargo. This ship is bound for North Africa, where the garlic will be traded for grain, for marble, for 1,000 other things that Rome needs. This is the engine of the empire. It's not just the legions and the emperors. It's the merchants and the farmers and the sailors. It's the millions of small transactions that make the whole thing work. And at the heart of it all, a small, unassuming bulb of garlic, a taste of Rome on its way to a new adventure. And as you turn to walk away, the image of that garlic-filled ship sailing out to sea is a powerful one. It's a reminder that even the smallest things can have the biggest impact, that a flavor can become an empire. The garlic-filled ship has set sail a small speck on the vast blue canvas of the Mediterranean. But we're not sailing with it. Instead, you are back in Rome, in the thick of the Forum Boarium, the cattle market, which has now become a bustling hub of commerce. The air is alive with the shouts of vendors, the clatter of coins, and the lowing of animals. And amidst it all, the smell of garlic is a constant, almost comforting presence. It's here in the dirt and the noise that you can truly understand the economic power of this little bulb. Garlic wasn't just a food, it was currency. The Roman economy was a marvel of the ancient world. It was a complex, multi-layered system of trade, taxation, and consumption. And at every level, from the grandest villa to the humblest street stall, garlic played a role. It was a cheap, readily available commodity that could be used for a wide variety of purposes, making it a stable and reliable part of the marketplace. You watch as a farmer from the countryside exchanges a large bundle of garlic for a new pair of sandals from a shoemaker. It's a simple transaction, but it tells a story of an economy built on real goods, real value, and a real tangible need. But it was more than just a barter item. Garlic was a commodity that could be bought and sold for actual coins. Merchants would buy vast quantities of it from the large agricultural estates, transport it to the city, and then sell it to smaller vendors who in turn sold it to the populace. This created a whole chain of commerce, a kind of ancient supply chain, with garlic as one of its most important links. A mainstream historical fact, the Roman economy was highly monetized, with a complex system of coinage that facilitated trade across the empire. Garlic was a key part of the system, its price fluctuating with the harvest and the demand, just like any modern-day commodity. A quirky tidbit that shows the economic importance of garlic Roman tax collectors, the publicani, would sometimes accept payment in kind, especially in the more rural areas. And what was one of the most common forms of payment? You guessed it. Garlic. A tax paid in garlic was a good deal for the tax collector, as it was a reliable, non-perishable food item that could be easily traded or sold for a profit. It was in essence a kind of ancient crypto, a decentralized, universally accepted form of value. Here's where the scholarly debate comes in. Historians still argue whether garlic's low cost was a sign of its low value or a testament to its efficient production. Was it so cheap because everyone had it? Or was it so plentiful because Roman farmers were so good at growing it? The answer is likely both. Its efficiency of production made it cheap and plentiful, which in turn made it a valuable staple for the average Roman. Its economic value wasn't in its rarity, but in its ubiquity and its utility. It was the ultimate everyman's commodity. You walk past a money changer's stall, and you notice a merchant haggling over the price of a large sack of garlic. He is trying to get a better price, arguing that the harvest was poor this year, and the bulbs are smaller than usual. The money changer, a shrewd-looking man with a keen eye for numbers, counters with the fact that the ships from Egypt are bringing in a new supply and the price will soon fall. It's a scene you could witness in any marketplace today. But here the commodity at the center of the debate is a simple bulb of garlic. It shows you that the fundamentals of economics haven't really changed. It's all about supply and demand, about the push and pull of the market. And in the Roman world, garlic was a major player in that game. So as you leave the market, the sounds and smells of commerce fading behind you, you have a new respect for this simple plant. It wasn't just a taste, or a medicine, or a spiritual tool. It was the grease in the gears of the Roman economy. It was a silent, pungent engine that helped to power a civilization. It was a testament to the fact that greatness, even economic greatness, can be found in the most unassuming of places. The market's noise is a distant echo now replaced by the hushed tones of a quiet Roman street at night. You're making your way through the residential areas where the stark difference between Roman social classes becomes palpable. On one side of the street, the flickering torchlight reveals the high walls of a wealthy patrician's domus, a luxurious home with a courtyard and frescoes. On the other, the dark shadows of a multi-storied insula, a common apartment building house dozens of families. And in this great social divide, garlic finds its place acting as a culinary and social marker. For the vast majority of Romans, the plebeian's garlic was a daily necessity. It was the flavor of life, the cheap and powerful ingredient that made simple meals palatable and provided a crucial nutritional punch. It was the food of the paupers, the poor, and it was consumed with gusto. Their Pole's porridge, their cheap bread, their lentils, almost everything was seasoned with a heavy hand of garlic. A mainstream historical fact for the urban poor, a significant portion of their diet consisted of grains, legumes, and vegetables, and strong-flavored foods like garlic and onions were essential for making these simple meals interesting and satisfying. Garlic was a democratizing flavor available to everyone, and a taste that united the masses. But for the wealthy elite, the patricians' garlic was a different story. For them, it was often seen as crude, unrefined, and frankly a bit smelly. Their villas were filled with more subtle, expensive flavors from across the empire, spices like pepper and cinnamon, from the east exotic meats and delicate wines. A pungent breath was a sign of a person who ate a peasant's diet, and so the wealthy often avoided garlic. It became a social faux pas, a culinary indicator of a person's lower class status. A quirky tidbit that highlights this cultural snobbery. The Roman poet Horace, in his satires, mocks those who reek of garlic, linking the smell to crude tastes and low breeding. You can almost feel the social cringe of a wealthy Roman at a dinner party trying to subtly avoid a person with allium breath. This social divide over garlic wasn't just a matter of taste. It was also a matter of philosophy. The Greek philosophers, whose ideas had a huge influence on Roman, thought often associated strong flavors and smells with a lack of moderation and a kind of barbaric nature. The Roman elite, who saw themselves as the inheritors of Greek culture, adopted this view. They preferred a more balanced, harmonious, and less aggressive kind of cuisine. This is where a key scholarly debate comes, and historians still argue whether the Roman elite's disdain for garlic was a genuine matter of taste or a deliberate cultural choice to distinguish themselves from the lower classes. Was it that they truly disliked the flavor, or was it that they wanted to create a clear culinary boundary between us and them? It was likely a bit of both a conscious and subconscious effort to build a wall of flavor between the haves and the have-nots. You can almost picture a Roman dinner party in a wealthy domus. The air is filled with the delicate scents of roasted peacock-spiced wine and fragrant herbs. The conversation is intellectual, the laughter is controlled, and the dishes are artful and complex. Now picture a family meal in a cramped insula apartment. The air is thick with the powerful, comforting aroma of garlic simmering with lentils. The conversation is loud, the laughter is boisterous, and the food is simple, hearty, and honest. The two scenes are a world apart, and the simple presence or absence of a single bulb of garlic is a powerful symbol of that distance. The journey of garlic from the steppes to the sacred temples and then to the grand stage of the Roman Empire was one of triumph. But its story is not a single, unified narrative. It's a story of contrast, of how a single plant could be a godlike offering for a gladiator and a social embarrassment for a senator. It was a food that built an empire, fed an army, and was, in the end, both celebrated and scorned. This is the heart of the Roman experience, a world of paradoxes and contradictions, where a simple bulb of garlic could mean so many things to so many people. The sun has set on the Roman Republic, and the empire with all its glory and its contradictions is a memory. Centuries have passed. You are no longer a Roman citizen, but a traveler in a different, darker age. The grand roads, once so meticulously maintained, are now cracked and overgrown. The bustling ports are quiet, their harbors silted up. The grand agricultural estates have been broken up, and the centralized power of Rome has vanished. And with it, a part of Roman life, a flavor that once defined an entire civilization, has begun to fade. We are in the Dark Ages now, and this is where the story of Roman garlic takes a curious and poignant turn toward obscurity. The collapse of the Roman Empire was not a single event, but a long, slow process of decay. It was a gradual unspooling of the social and economic fabric that had held everything together. And as the centralized government and its massive army retreated, the complex logistical networks that had supported it began to crumble. Remember those ships sailing from Ostia to North Africa laden with garlic. They stopped sailing with the same regularity. The great trade routes, once so secure, became dangerous, plagued by pirates and raiders. The flow of goods, ideas, and flavors slowed to a trickle. This had a profound impact on agriculture. The large-scale, highly efficient farming of the Roman latifundia gave way to smaller, more localized, and less productive farming. The detailed agricultural texts of Columella and Cato were no longer widely read or followed. The knowledge of how to cultivate specific high-yield varieties of garlic was lost. Farmers no longer had the resources or the incentive to grow vast quantities of it for a distant market. They grew what they needed for their own families and their local communities. The garlic that was grown became wilder again, less cultivated, and less uniform. A mainstream historical fact, the decline of the Roman Empire, led to a significant decrease in long-distance trade and a shift towards a more agrarian, localized economy in Western Europe. This shift had a direct impact on the cultivation and availability of many Roman staples, including garlic. This isn't to say that garlic vanished entirely. Oh, no. It was far too useful for that. It was still a staple of the peasant diet, a cheap and powerful source of flavor and nutrition. But its role had changed. It was no longer a major commodity, a food that fueled an empire. It was a regional plant, a local flavor, a shadow of its former self. A quirky tidbit that shows its enduring, if diminished, presence. Medieval healers and herbalists, who often worked from old Roman or Greek medical texts, still prescribed garlic for a variety of ailments. It was seen as a potent cure for everything from the common cold to the plague. They hadn't forgotten its medicinal properties, but they were working with a different and often less potent strain of the plant. Here's where the scholarly debate gets really interesting. Historians still argue whether the decline of Roman garlic was a matter of cultural shift or agricultural collapse. Did people simply lose their taste for strong, garlicky food as they adopted new culinary traditions, or did the loss of Roman infrastructure make the widespread cultivation and trade of garlic impossible? It was likely a cycle, a vicious spiral of decline. As the infrastructure failed, garlic became harder to get. And as it became harder to get people naturally adapted, their diets turning to other more local flavors. The memory of the rich, pungent varieties of Roman garlic faded, and new, more subdued varieties took their place. So you stand here in a world that is less connected, less organized, and a little less flavorful. The Roman world, with its grand aqueducts and its pungent dinner parties, feels impossibly distant. The ghost of Roman garlic, a once mighty flavor, is now a subtle memory in the soil, a whisper in the wind. And as you breathe in the cool, damp air of this new age, you can almost taste the silence, the void left by a flavor that once defined an entire civilization. The centuries drift by a slow, quiet parade of change. The ghost of Roman glory is now just that, a ghost. The world has moved on, and you find yourself in a new age. The medieval period is in full swing, and Europe is a patchwork of small kingdoms and fiefdoms. The grand villas and bustling markets of Rome are gone, replaced by castles and walled cities. And in this new world, the once mighty flavor of Roman garlic has become a memory, a forgotten taste. The question isn't just why it declined, but why it was replaced. Why did people stop craving that fierce, pungent taste? The answer lies in a combination of cultural shifts, agricultural changes, and a general move away from the Roman way of life. The fall of Rome brought a change in diet for the elite. The Roman patricians' distaste for garlic had been a cultural marker, and this disdain was now being inherited by the new ruling classes of Europe, the feudal lords, and the nascent nobility. They wanted to distinguish themselves from the common people, the peasants, and they did it with their food. The peasants still ate garlic, of course. It was cheap and readily available, but the rich began to favor more subtle, delicate flavors. Spices from the East, once a Roman luxury, became an even more coveted status symbol. A mainstream historical fact, medieval European cuisine, for the nobility often favored complex spice blends and mild sweet flavors in stark contrast to the strong, garlic-heavy meals of the peasantry. The Roman garlic, with its powerful kick, simply didn't fit into this new culinary hierarchy. It was a flavor for the poor, and the rich wanted no part of it. But it wasn't just a matter of social snobbery. The very nature of the garlic itself had changed. Remember that meticulous Roman cultivation? We talked about the deliberate engineering of specific varieties. That knowledge was largely lost. The garlic that was now being grown was a different beast. It was a wilder, more unpredictable plant. It was also, and here's a quirky tidbit, often smaller and less potent. Without the benefit of selective breeding and intensive cultivation, the garlic strains began to revert to a more natural, less aggressive form. The Roman garlic, the one that could clear a room and make a meal, was fading into genetic obscurity. The garlic of the Middle Ages was still useful, but it wasn't the same. It was a pale echo of its former self. And this brings us to a key scholarly debate. Historians still argue whether this shift away from strong, garlicky flavors was a conscious cultural choice or an unintentional result of the loss of agricultural technology. Did they deliberately stop growing the powerful varieties, or did those varieties simply die out because no one knew how to cultivate them properly anymore? It's a tricky question. The two ideas likely fed into each other. As the rich began to disdain garlic, there was less demand for the high-quality, pungent varieties. And as those varieties became harder to grow, the cultural shift away from them became even more pronounced. The result was a culinary feedback loop that sealed the fate of Roman garlic. You can almost taste the difference. The robust, fiery garlic of Rome, a flavor that announced its presence with authority, is gone. In its place is a milder, gentler garlic, a flavor that is more of a background player than a star. It's a flavor that is still used, but it no longer defines a meal. It's a flavor that has been tamed, domesticated, and ultimately a little bit forgotten. The Roman Empire was built on strong flavors and powerful people. The Middle Ages were built on different values, and they had a different taste. The forgotten flavor of Roman garlic is a symbol of that change, a quiet testament to how a single ingredient can tell the story of a lost civilization. The world has gotten colder. You feel it in the air, a subtle but undeniable chill that has settled over the land. This isn't just a metaphor for the times, it's a physical reality. The Roman Empire, in its later years, experienced a period of climatic cooling. It was a gradual change, not an ice age, but a shift that affected everything from growing seasons to trade routes. And in this new, colder world, the story of Roman garlic takes another turn, a silent, almost invisible shift driven by the changing climate. Remember the vast, sun-drenched fields of Roman garlic, cultivated with meticulous care. Well, those fields were now subject to a different kind of pressure. The cooler temperatures meant shorter growing seasons and a general decrease in agricultural yields. The Roman varieties of garlic, which had been bred over centuries for specific Roman climates, began to struggle. They were a bit like a plant in the wrong place, a warm weather crop, trying to make it in a new, colder world. This is where a mainstream historical fact comes in a period of climatic cooling known as the late antique Little Ice Age Lallia, is believed to have contributed to agricultural instability and social upheaval in the centuries following the fall of the Roman Empire. This climate change, a slow but powerful force, was a silent antagonist in the story of Roman garlic. But it wasn't just the cold. It was the combination of factors. The loss of Roman infrastructure meant that farmers no longer had the same access to irrigation systems or the extensive knowledge of soil management. They were left to the mercy of the elements. The garlic they grew became hardier, yes, but also more like its wild ancestors, smaller, less uniform, and with a different flavor profile. The rich, pungent, and large-headed garlic of Rome was a product of human intervention, and without that intervention, it began to disappear. A quirky tidbit that shows the human impact of this climate change as the weather got colder, people started to seek out hardier, more resilient food sources. They turned to things like root vegetables and cabbages plants that could survive a cold snap. This shift in diet meant that garlic, while still valued, was no longer the undisputed king of the kitchen. It was one of many flavors as supporting actor in a new culinary drama. The Roman palate, which had been built on a foundation of sun-drenched ingredients, was adapting to a new reality, a reality where the sun was a little less reliable and the winters a little more harsh. And this leads us to a key scholarly debate. Historians still argue whether the decline of specific Roman garlic varieties was a direct result of climate change or an indirect consequence of the agricultural collapse that followed the fall of the empire. Was it that the garlic couldn't survive the cold? Or was it that the farmers didn't know how to grow it properly in the cold? It's a complex puzzle. The climate change likely exacerbated the agricultural collapse, creating a perfect storm that led to the extinction of specific garlic strains. The old Roman garlic, a product of a specific time and place, was simply no longer sustainable in this new world. So you stand here feeling the cool wind on your face, and you realize that history isn't just made by emperors and armies. It's made by silent, powerful forces like the climate. The story of Roman garlic is a story of human ingenuity and cultural shifts, but it's also a story of a silent, natural extinction. The taste of Rome, once so powerful and so ubiquitous, was slowly being erased by a few degrees of cooling, a few less hours of sun, and a slow, gradual shift in the rhythm of the seasons. It's a humbling thought, a reminder that we are all, in the end, at the mercy of the natural world. The world is a different place now. The slow, quiet changes of climate have given way to a sudden, terrifying shift. The air once cool now feels thick with a different kind of dread. A sickness, a plague, a death that travels on the wind has swept across Europe. It is the Middle Ages, and the Black Death, a scourge that would kill millions, has arrived. And in this time of fear, superstition, and death, the story of garlic takes on a new and strangely familiar role. It is no longer just a food or a cultural marker. It is a shield against the apocalypse. The people of this new world, terrified and desperate, turned to anything and everything they could find to ward off the sickness. They burned aromatic herbs, they prayed to saints, and they sought out ancient folk remedies. And in this frantic search, they rediscovered the ancient power of garlic. The Romans had used it as a medicine, as a cure-all, and now in a time of true crisis, it was elevated to a new, almost mythical status. People believed its pungent aroma could ward off the miasma, the bad air they thought was responsible for the plague. A mainstream historical fact, during the Black Death, people in many parts of Europe wore garlic around their necks or in pouches on their belts, believing its strong smell would protect them from the disease. It was a practice that had echoes of the Roman gladiators and their garlic amulets, a testament to the enduring power of a shared belief. But it wasn't just a superstition. There was a kind of desperate, unscientific logic to it. They believed that the plague was a poison, and that a strong-smelling, powerful food like garlic could counteract that poison. They would eat it raw in large quantities, and they would rub it on their bodies. A quirky tidbit that shows the length of their desperation: there's a legend of a group of thieves in Marseille who, during a plague outbreak, robbed the homes of the dead without getting sick. When they were finally caught, they confessed that they had protected themselves with a vinegar-based concoction that was heavily infused with garlic. This four thieves vinegar became a famous folk remedy, a story that passed from generation to generation, cementing garlic's reputation as a plague fighter. Here's where the scholarly debate comes. Historians still argue whether the medicinal use of garlic during the Black Death had any actual effect, or was a purely psychological defense mechanism. Was it that the antimicrobial properties of garlic, however small, provided some protection, or was it that the belief in its power gave people a sense of control in a world gone mad? The answer is likely a bit of both. While it certainly wasn't a cure for the plague, the psychological boost of believing you were protected, combined with the general health benefits of eating a healthy food, likely helped in some small way. It was a symbol of hope, a tangible thing they could do in the face of an invisible, unstoppable enemy. So you stand here in the shadow of a plague, and you realize that garlic's story is a story of resilience. It survived the fall of an empire, the collapse of a trade network, and the subtle changes of a cooling climate. It endured because it was useful, because it was powerful, and because people in their darkest hour believed in it. The Roman garlic, in its grand, pungent glory, may have been a casualty of history. But the spirit of garlic, the belief in its power to heal and to protect, was very much alive. It was a flavor that had become a legend, a story that was whispered in the dark, a testament to the fact that, even in the face of death, the memory of a powerful plant could offer a glimmer of hope. And as you close your eyes, you can almost smell the pungent smoke of a medieval fire and the quiet, desperate hope that came with it. The plague, with all its fear and superstition, has receded. The world has slowly, painfully begun to heal. But the subtle changes of history, The decline of an empire, the collapse of trade, the shift in climate have left their mark, and nowhere is it more apparent than in the story of Roman garlic. We are now in a new, quieter world, a world where the old, powerful, pungent varieties of garlic are simply gone. They are extinct. Not in a sudden, dramatic way like a volcano wiping out a species, but in a slow, almost undetectable genetic fade. The ghost of Roman garlic is now more than just a memory. It is a lost piece of our biological heritage. The Romans, in their agricultural genius, had selectively bred garlic for specific traits. They wanted a large, uniform, and intensely flavorful bulb that could be mass-produced and shipped across their vast empire. These were, in essence, highly specialized cultivars, a product of human intervention. But with the collapse of the empire and the loss of that agricultural knowledge, these specialized varieties were no longer maintained. Farmers in the Middle Ages were focused on survival, not on genetic purity. They planted whatever garlic they could get their hands on, and over generations, the old, powerful strains began to interbreed with wilder, less specialized varieties. A mainstream historical fact, a process known as genetic erosion, where specific genetic traits or entire varieties of a crop are lost over time due to a lack of cultivation and selective breeding, is a common phenomenon in agricultural history. The Roman garlic varieties were a casualty of this process. You can almost picture it, a farmer in a small medieval village planting his garlic. He doesn't know and doesn't care about the Roman past. He just wants to feed his family. So he plants a mix of whatever. He has a few bulbs from his neighbor, a few bulbs he found growing wild on the edge of his field. Over time, the unique genetic signature of the old Roman garlic, the genes that gave it its intense flavor and its large size, were diluted and eventually lost entirely. The powerful flavor that a Roman legionnaire had relied on was now just a whisper in the ground, a quirky tidbit that shows the specificity of this loss. Roman writers sometimes referred to different types of garlic by name, mentioning their size, color, and pungency. They would talk about a large white variety with a very strong flavor or a smaller, more purple variety that was milder. These specific names and descriptions, once so important, are now just historical footnotes. We know they existed, but we have no way of knowing what they were actually like. It's like knowing the name of a famous painting that has been lost forever. And here's where the scholarly debate comes in. Historians and botanists still argue whether any of the old Roman garlic strains could have survived in isolated pockets hidden away in a remote monastery or a forgotten farm. Is it possible that a few of these ancient bulbs, a few genetic whispers from the past, are still out there waiting to be rediscovered? While the chances are slim, it's a hopeful thought, a kind of botanical archaeology. It's a testament to the power of a single lost plant, a single lost flavor, to capture our imagination. So you stand here in the quiet medieval countryside, and you realize that a part of the Roman world is gone forever. It wasn't destroyed in a battle or buried in a ruin. It simply faded away. The forgotten history of Roman garlic is not just a story of its rise, but also of its silent, slow, and natural extinction. It's a powerful reminder that history is not just about what is built, but also about what is lost. And as you breathe in the cool air, you can almost taste the silence, the void left by a flavor that once defined an entire civilization. The ghost of Roman garlic, a powerful flavor that once defined an empire, is now a distant memory. But is it a completely lost cause? The human spirit is a funny thing. We have this innate desire to dig up the past, to find what was lost, and to try to understand it. And in our modern world, with all its technology and its scientific curiosity, we are doing just that. We are trying to find the ghost of Roman garlic, not in the ground, but in the annals of history and the labs of modern science. The forgotten history of Roman garlic is now being actively and sometimes passionately researched. Our journey through time has shown us the historical record, the Roman texts that praised its flavor and its medicinal properties, the archaeological digs that have unearthed garlic bulbs in ancient tombs and kitchens. These are the clues, the breadcrumbs, that lead us to a better understanding of what was lost. We have the words of Pliny the Elder and Cato the Elder giving us a literary description of the varieties they grew. We have the recipes in Apicius, a cookbook that tells us how they cooked with it. A mainstream historical fact. Modern historians and food archaeologists use these ancient texts, as well as pollen and plant remains found at dig sites, to reconstruct the diets and agricultural practices of the Roman world. This work is helping us to build a picture, however incomplete, of the garlic that once was. But the research doesn't stop there. Modern botanists and geneticists are also getting in on the act. They are studying the genetic makeup of modern garlic varieties, especially those that grow in the Mediterranean region, to see if they can find any lingering traces of the old Roman strains. They are looking for genetic markers, tiny clues in the DNA that might point to a shared lineage with the garlic of 2 millennia ago. A quirky tidbit that shows how complex this work is. Some researchers are even trying to sequence the DNA from ancient garlic remains found at archaeological sites, a kind of botanical CSI. It's a long shot as DNA from plants degrades over time, but it's a testament to our relentless curiosity. And this brings us to a key scholarly debate. Historians and geneticists still argue whether it's even possible to resurrect a lost plant variety from its DNA alone. Can we, through modern science, recreate the exact flavor and characteristics of the Roman garlic, or is the best we can hope for a close approximation, a kind of culinary reconstruction? The answer is likely the latter. The unique flavor of a plant is a complex thing influenced by everything from its genetics to the soil it's grown in and the climate it matures in. The Roman garlic was a product of its time and place, and those things are impossible to recreate. We can learn from it, we can be inspired by it, but we can't truly bring it back to life. So you stand in the present day surrounded by the echoes of a lost flavor. The garlic you eat today, the perfectly uniform, mass-produced garlic in your kitchen, is a descendant of the Roman varieties, but it is not the same. It is a product of a different world, a world of global trade and modern agriculture. But the quest to understand its past, the desire to learn about the powerful, pungent, and historically significant garlic of the Roman Empire, continues. It's a testament to the power of a single humble bulb to tell a story that spans empires, centuries, and continents. And as we continue to search for the ghost of Roman garlic, we are not just looking for a lost plant. We are looking for a lost piece of ourselves. The quest for the ghost of Roman garlic has been a long one, a journey through time and across continents. But our journey is coming to an end now. The sun is setting again, not on ancient Rome, but on the story we've been telling. You can feel the quietness settling in the day's journey, fading into a gentle hush. The memory of that first pungent aroma, the one that drifted through the streets of the Subura, is now a soft, almost imperceptible whisper. We've traced its path from the wild steppes to the grand villas, from the hands of gladiators to the kitchens of peasants. We've seen it as a spiritual tool, a medical marvel, and an economic engine, and we've watched as it slowly, quietly faded away, a casualty of time and change. The final chapter of this story isn't about a big event or a grand discovery. It's about a quiet, natural disappearance. The Roman garlic, the specific powerful strains that fed an empire, went extinct. It wasn't a sudden cataclysmic event. It was a slow, gentle fading. The loss of agricultural knowledge, the cooling of the climate, the shift in cultural tastes, all of these things conspired to make a once mighty flavor a thing of the past. The garlic you eat today, while a descendant of those ancient bulbs, is not the same. It is a new chapter in a very old story. But the ghost of Roman garlic is not entirely gone. It lives on in the stories we tell, the texts we read, and the archaeological finds we unearth. It lives on in our imagination, a powerful reminder of how interconnected our world truly is. A single bulb of garlic, a simple flavor, can tell us so much about a civilization, their beliefs, their social structures, their economy, their science. It's a testament to the power of the small, the mundane, to hold the great truths of history. And as you close your eyes, you can almost taste it again. That fierce, powerful flavor, the taste of an empire. And then it's gone, a whisper in the dark. Sweet dreams.